Alright? Just been chatting to a bloke who agreed with us on the basics of socialism. He believes in what I believe, that the working class should be in power, that the wealth should be shared fairly and democratically, collectively. We should have a better society. There shouldn't be war and poverty and all this and climate change. He agreed with all that. But then I mentioned Palestine, right? And I pointed out that today, or rather yesterday now, because it's 12:30 in the morning, there was over 500,000 people marching through the streets of London in defence, in support of the Palestinians and against Israeli genocide. Over 500,000 people. And yet it was barely mentioned in the media. The newspapers, the news channels, they're fucking covering it over because they don't want the British public to know about it. They don't want the British public to support the Palestinians. And this guy who I was chatting with, he didn't support the Palestinians either. Well, that's no coincidence. The media doesn't support Palestine, and the media has a massive influence on the opinions of the public. So his opinions are not his own. They're not well thought out opinions. They're not objective. They come from the fucking media. A media that is very anti-Palestine and pro-Israel. But why is the media pro-Israel? Well, it's because it's pro-imperialist. The media backs up and strengthens the ruling class of Britain and the ruling class of America and the ruling class of Israel, who are all allies. Imperial allies. Imperialism is the highest stage of capitalism. It's where powerful ruling classes and their military might is used against other countries to gain profits, to gain wealth out of those countries. And that's what Britain and America and Israel do as a unit in the Middle East. And the Palestinians, sadly, are in the way. Just an innocent population getting on with its own shit, but they're in the way of what imperialism wants to do in the Middle East. So, fucking tragically, they're trying to wipe them out. They're trying to murder them all. Like Hitler did with the Jews. Well, that's what the Israelis are doing to the Palestinians now. How ironic that the Israelis are Jews. Fucking hell, man. It's mad. But yeah, this guy didn't agree with us on Palestine. So I had to try and convince him. And he asked us, well, why do socialists or why do Marxists oppose what's going on in Palestine? Why do you support Palestine? Well, if the Palestinians were victorious, if they managed to gain their freedom and were no longer brutally oppressed by the Israelis, by the Zionist regime in Israel, then the whole imperialist structure would be weakened in the Middle East. And when the imperialists are weakened abroad, they're also weakened at home. So the British working class would be able to fight back and gain more of the wealth for itself, because the imperialists who rule society would be weakened. This is how the working class after World War II went forward and gained reforms through Parliament. We got the NHS, we got the welfare state, we got council housing, comprehensive education, the benefit system. We got all these things. Why? Because the ruling class was weak. It had been weakened by the war, and it was weakened by independence movements throughout the empire. So the imperialists were weakened, allowing the working class at home to gain progress. And we've got to do that shit again. We have to weaken the imperialists for us as a class, the working class, to go forward, to make our lives better. We take advantage of their weakness to make our lives better. So we've got to support the Palestinians, not just because it's morally right, because it's evil to slaughter innocent children, to brutally oppress a population, not just because it's morally right, but because it's politically right. It's the right thing to do for the working class of Britain and all working classes around the world. We weaken the imperialists if the Palestinians gain a victory and win their freedom. We weaken our rulers, our super rich rulers, the ruling class who dominate us, who oppress and exploit us. We weaken them, and we can then go on the offensive and win more wealth for our class. And that's what we should all want. And if you don't want that, well, it's because the ruling class are controlling your mind, basically. They're in your head, they've got their ideas in your head, and they're turning you against your own political interests and your own class, which is just madness. Don't fall for it. Anyway, yeah, so over 1 million people marching on the streets of London today, and you would think it didn't even happen if you looked in the fucking British media. Scumbags that they are. Free Palestine, free the working class. All power to the oppressed. Take it easy, see you in the next one. Tatty bye.